everybody wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
Getting into this graffiti subculture can seem pretty daunting and confusing as well, so here's 5 things I wish I knew when I first started getting into graffiti. If you're more experienced, feel free to leave any things that you wish you knew when you first started in the comments down below, and we're also gonna have some extra tips sprinkled in throughout the video. So the very first thing I wish I knew was not to make graffiti the center of my life, which I feel like this is very important to put number 1 on the list because, well, when you're first getting into graffiti, it's often because for a lot of us, we're looking for some kind of distraction. We're looking for something, you know, to vent. That's one reason a lot of people give some form of escapism, if you will. That's one of the most common reasons I hear from graffiti artists as to why they started. And because of that, it's very easy to make graffiti the center of your life, especially if you're younger. It's really easy to go ahead and take that and say, you know what, I got a lot of things going on in my life that just suck, that I'm not happy with, I'm not in a good place, whatever the case might be, and I'm gonna take graffiti and put that at the center of my world. Well, that can lead to you just worsening off your current situation, making your current life worse than it already is. Once again, assuming you're a little younger, it's really easy for graffiti to make your grades start slipping. It's really easy for graffiti to make personal relationships start slipping as well, whether it's with family, friends, or a significant other. With graffiti at the center of your life as well, you're more willing to do much more risky things that maybe you shouldn't do. Friendly reminder here that people do lose their life doing graffiti, oftentimes at a young age. So while it might seem all fun and games, it might seem like something harmless to put at the center of your life, graffiti at the center of your life especially can be very destructive to just about every aspect of your life. Now, if you want to actually develop your style and you want to make learning graffiti as easy as possible, get rid of all that frustration, all that unnecessary confusion, then check out our How to Do Graffiti book in the description down below. At this point, we've helped I mean, you guys have really supported the book. We've helped a ridiculous amount of people learn graffiti through this book. A lot of people really enjoy it. And that's because we cover a lot of information that has never been talked about in graffiti, and we teach it to you with hundreds of pictures throughout the book that really hold your hand through the process, making it perfect for brand new graffiti artists. And for you more experienced guys, we go into so much detail with just about every single topic that you're bound to learn something new. We've got digital copies at theartistblock.inc where you can use this coupon code to save yourself some money, and we have physical copies over on Amazon. Both of those are linked in the description down below. Check it out to make graffiti easy to learn. Next thing I really wish I knew, and this kind of requires that you get into the scene a little bit, but that is graffiti beef is like almost never serious, especially the younger you are. And if you're older and you're still taking graffiti beef super seriously, then at that point you should have matured past that. That doesn't say that you can't do graffiti, that doesn't say that you can't enjoy the art from whatever the case is, but to obsess over beefs as an adult is a bit ridiculous. Keep in mind, like, I get it. A lot of people feel, you know, somebody went over my piece, they went over my hairstyle, I gotta maintain my spots, I gotta patrol my areas if I can, and I gotta uphold this reputation. I put in this work, I gotta maintain that work. Makes perfect sense for the community of graffiti and for what the goal of graffiti is. But if you're a toy, if you're newer, and somebody goes over you, well, that happens. That's kind of your place on the totem pole. You're at the very bottom. People are gonna go over you. They're gonna take your spot. And sure, you could take them back, but you can't afford to obsess over every single beef as a new graffiti artist because you're gonna have your hands full. You're not good enough to, number 1, see all those beefs to their end. Number 2, you're not good enough to win all those beefs if you're in any place that has graffiti relevance, that has a pretty sizable graffiti community. And if you have beef in an area that doesn't have a sizable community, then it's even more silly because you're beefing with other toys that are hitting like 2 stop signs. So what are you really beefing about? It's always super immature, it's always super petty, and as graffiti artists, we tend to blow it out of proportion and take it to places it has no business being. And don't get me wrong, you can be an adult and still be active, but to put a pin in this and clarify this note for number 2, I'm not saying graffiti beefs are completely irrelevant. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, maintain your spots, but rather you shouldn't obsess over the beefs like some people do, especially newer graffiti artists. Number 3, I'll be honest, this was a bitter pill to swallow. I mean, I did not want to hear this for the first 6 years I was doing graffiti, but if you are an amateur, you don't have style, period. You're not capable of it, you can't copy it effectively, you can't utilize it to any degree at all whatsoever. All you can do is attempt to copy and then produce mistakes. That's it. That was an extremely bitter pill to swallow. I remember probably my stupidest moment in my entire life was when my brother and I were sketching at the kitchen table, and he did graffiti for anybody who doesn't know, as did my father, and obviously I wasn't as good as they were, so I was sketching, I was doing my thing. I came up with this trash letter, abysmal looking G, and I gave it this crazy weird fill-in, and my brother looks at it and he goes, you really have to work on your letter structure. And I turned to this man with a straight face, not laughing at all, and said, no, I don't need to have dope letters as long as my fill-ins are sick. That is the stupidest thing I have ever said. But back then, I was an amateur. I didn't want to hear that I needed to learn the fundamentals until later on I met my mentor and he essentially said, hey look, you don't know what you're doing and you suck. You're a toy. Straight up, we're taking you back to the basics. And you know, so be it. But that's when I began making progress, and that's the only place you begin to make progress. Nobody ever practices style. That's not how style works. You practice the fundamentals, and as you learn the fundamentals, you become more capable of style. Now there's two ways you can do this. The first one is trial and error. This is the path just about every single graffiti artist takes. You spend years, decades trying style, you try it and you try it and you try it, and with each attempt, maybe you get something right and you inch forward ever so slightly, and then you do another piece, hand style or throwy, and you get a bunch of things wrong and you backpedal quite a few. This is why it takes most graffiti artists decades to learn the easiest of lessons. It's because they keep adding style when they don't have style, and it prevents them from actually getting better. Then you have the second method, which you guys already know, so I'm gonna keep it short, but you keep it simple, practice the basics. It's the one advice that I always give that nobody listens to, and everybody thinks doesn't apply to them, but it most certainly does. Number 4, you don't need a mentor. Especially nowadays, mentors are mostly useless. They don't really do much of anything. Because of the internet, all the information a mentor would give you is easily found online. About the only use a mentor really has nowadays is kind of showing you the ropes into graffiti and making introductions, right? Kind of introducing you to new people and taking you to spots if that's the kind of thing you want to go for. But even so, do you need a mentor to achieve those things? You can achieve those on your own, and it's actually pretty easy to do in most cases. You don't really need a mentor to show you where a spot is. Sure, they can definitely give you the fast track to the spot, but on your own you can easily do that as well. As far as do you need a mentor to meet other people, a lot of graffiti artists, especially more experienced ones, feel like I don't want to meet more people. I kind of want to stay away from graffiti artists. So while yes, a mentor is good for meeting other people, chances are you're better off not meeting those people in the first place. And we'll get to why in the later tips, but those would be the uses a mentor has. Any other uses as far as teaching you how to tag, teaching you how to rock throwies, teaching you how to do pieces, all that stuff you can easily find tutorials for online. And there's plenty of them out there. And in all honesty, they'll probably do a better job than your mentors because mentors tend to be pretty terrible teachers. Number 5, be careful who you paint with. And I mean that on a multifaceted, front here, where number 1, you want to be careful with the kind of people that you actually bring along to paint alongside you, like to do a wall with you, but you also want to be careful with who you just invite to be your lookout. Maybe they don't paint at all, maybe they're not even a graffiti artist. In graffiti, it's best to have a very tight-knit circle because a lot of times people will snitch on you. People will go ahead and they'll set you up. They'll do whatever they need to do for whatever reasons they come up with. Some of the coolest people I've ever met in my life have been graffiti artists and writers, but at the same time, some of the shadiest, absolutely degenerate people I've ever met also been graffiti artists and writers. The point being is you don't know what you're going to get out of this mixed bag, and it is very likely, because we are writers after all, right? We are in a community full of criminals. It is very likely that the people you're going to be meeting, the people you're going to be dealing with, have no issue lying and are not trustworthy at all. I recommend, if you can't absolutely trust the person to have your back in a serious situation, don't bring them to paint, period. You're better off going solo at that point. Bonus tip, don't get too caught up in crews and trying to get into crews and trying to force your way into crews or whatever the case is. I mean, if you really want to be in a crew, just make it one of your own. You'll be much more fulfilled that way. A lot of newer graffiti artists, they really want to be in crews because they think that they can reap the benefits of that crew's fame. I used to be in a situation where I really wanted to be part of the RSH crew my mentor was in because my mentor was a legend and RSH was a legendary crew, and I wanted to be kind of among that echelon at the time. I got into it, and immediately, the millisecond he said you could be into the crew, I immediately realized I have no business being in this crew. I am way too toy to be in this crew. I should not be here at all whatsoever. The point here being, in graffiti, it doesn't matter what crew you're in, people judge you based off of your work. They don't really care what crew you're in. They only care what crew you're in if you're dope, in which case you wouldn't need the crew because they still think you're dope. This ambition to get into crews or to at least connect with other people and unify it underneath a crew name leads people to, number 1, forcing their ways into crews they have no business being in, which gets you around untrustworthy people that you don't really have a bond with, that you can't depend on, or it forces people to not only create their crew, but then get anybody they possibly can into that crew. It's just recruiting person after person after person, which ends in the same result as now you're around a bunch of people you can't depend on, which both of those scenarios completely defeats the purpose of a crew. The purpose purpose of a crew, and really the only time a crew is useful, is when it is an extremely tight-knit group of people that are just friends that like to paint together. They have that shared interest and they know that they can depend on one another. They are very close friends even outside of graffiti. I'm talking like you guys would invite one another to family gatherings of sorts, right? You're having a barbecue? Well, the homie gets to come through. That kind of connection, that kind of bond, that's what a crew is meant to be. That's when it works best. And that's when you can really depend on the people beside you. And even then, you still have to be wary of some of those people, but that at least gives you the best chance. So once again, the point being is when you kind of just force your way into a crew, or you kind of just lackadaisically fall into crews, the crew doesn't bring much value to you, and you don't bring much value to the crew in those scenarios either. Back when I worked at the graffiti store, I would meet people just on an ordinary basis then coming into the shop, but also through some of the events that we would hold, and man, I would end up in so many crews over the years working at that shop, most of which I couldn't even tell you the names of the crew, and most of them probably don't even remember I'm in the crew. In fact, I can say for sure there's a certain specific crew I'm not gonna mention, but they clearly don't remember I was in the crew. if you know, you know. Even though I showed proof that I met some of the people in the crew, you really can't blame them because they got people all over the world, so how are they really supposed to know? They don't know who's in their crew and who's not. But a lot of times, people, when they like your work, they'll put you down in their crew, or they'll at least offer you a spot in the crew as a sign of respect. So if you're thinking that, you know, hey, me getting into this crew will finally make me somebody in graffiti, it's not. Nobody really cares at the end of the day. Not unless you're actually pretty good at graffiti. But dudes, that pretty much wraps it up. If you got any tips that you wish you knew getting into graffiti, leave them in the comments down below. It might help somebody out. Dudes, if you guys want to learn graffiti, check out our book in the description down below. Once again, it is the best way to learn graffiti, makes it as easy as humanly possible, and you'll get decades worth of information there that you really can't find anywhere else. Check it out in the description down below. And as always, if you want some more graffiti tutorials, we got a playlist for you right up here with more graffiti content right down here, and I'll catch you guys back here next week. Thanks for watching.